My topic today is secured, more than just coding. So I'll basically be talking about secure coding. What is secure code? It's 2022 and everyone has or is getting hacked. Basically, from the Uber hack to the Flutterwave hack, everybody is getting hacked. What can be hacked? We have people, we have processes, we have software, and today we'll be focusing on hacking software. It isn't enough. And why did I put this up there? Most developers are focused on getting a product out. For most developers, the end goal is to get the product out there. You want people to use it. And I get it. That's what brings the money. It's what pays me, so I understand. But it has stopped being just enough to get products out there. We have to make sure that not only does the app work, is it secure? So today we're going to walk through security vulnerabilities. That's common web vulnerabilities for the guys that do web development here. Application vulnerabilities for my mobile developers. And just coding habits, basically. Good or bad coding habits. A vulnerability is anything that can cause problems for your apps. Simple. I said apps. For your apps. It's basically anything that can allow somebody to gain access or unauthorized access to information that they're not supposed to have. OAPS top 10 is a list of the top 10 vulnerabilities. The first one is broken access control. This basically means that, and I'm just going to state examples. It's a vulnerability that allows people to access things that they're not supposed to be able to access. So as a user, if I'm able to access anybody else's information, it is counted as broken access control. As a developer, it's your responsibility that user A can only access user Z's information and nobody else's information. I'm hoping they get my dongle so I can just show you guys what hacking looks like. Just a little bit. I'm hoping so. Cryptographic failure means, and I'm guessing anybody that has done web for a while knows that data is not safe unless encrypted. So in cases where you encrypt and you don't do it well enough, you have cryptographic failure, which means basically your data is out there for anybody that wants to have it. Injection. Now, throughout my slides, you're going to see one phrase, never trust user input. And that is because for anybody that's developing a web, you take in user input a lot. But if this is not properly managed, your websites can be hacked, or basically things that you don't want to be shown on your website can be displayed. I'll show it if they allow me to do my demo. Security misconfiguration basically means, for those of you that know WordPress, I skipped one, but I'll still go there. Means for those of you that use WordPress a lot, it's like when you don't update plugins, when you're using tools and you just don't use them the way they are meant to be used. It's very common, and that's why it's the fifth on the list. Insecure design means that the way you designed your product allows for it to be bypassed. A very common example is the way, and this is on the technical side, you set that /admin takes you to the admin page. And no matter what happens, once you go to /admin, you can access admin privileges. That's insecure design. You designed it in a way that if me as a normal user figures out that /admin means admin pages, let me just go to /admin and do whatever I want. Free keys to the kingdom. Vulnerable and data components. I don't know how to repeat this. No matter what you do as a developer, you are not supposed to use outdated components because there's a high chance somebody like me has found a way to break it and you don't know about it. So always update, basically. Identification and authentication failures basically means that you have to be able to identify who is entering your site at what time. So if I come into your site and I know Coco, you have to know that it's a Shay that is knocking. And then ensure that what Shay can do is only what Shay can do. I'll explain that in a later slide. Software and data integrity failure means that you must ensure that whatever data that is on your site remains the same. So for example, can one of you give me your name so I can reference that person? Soft. If Soft has 100, as life is soft, 100 million naira in his account, he wants to ensure that he's the only one that knows it. If not, they'll carry him in the night. So software and data integrity make sure as a developer that you ensure that data remains the way. He doesn't want to come one day and realize that his 100 million has turned into 10 naira. He will sue you. It's just fact. Last two, security logging and monitoring failures. This just states that as developers, we need to log whatever happens on our site. When somebody logs in, write it down somewhere on your server. When somebody makes a payment, write it down somewhere. So that if anything happens, someone like me hacks your site in the middle of the night, you will at least see that, okay, this is when you entered, this is what you did, and you can mitigate. Then server-side request forgery, I will explain that in a later slide. Next slide. Broken access control. Authentication failed, you shall not pass. And somebody that looks like Merlin on drugs. Broken access control, like I explained, basically means you have the keys to the kingdom. People should only be able to access where they are meant to access. For those of you that are in this event, you know that there are certain places that you cannot go to, or there are certain places that you're not allowed to go to. For example, maybe the speaker's lounge. A normal deaf first participant cannot go to the speaker's lounge. And it is that way because there's somebody there that will send you back if you try to enter the speaker's lounge. That is what it means to have good access control. Broken access control is if, for example, you left that door open and any random person could just walk in into the admin, to the speaker's lounge and just, chill, enjoy himself. That is broken access control. Anyone can access anyone's information. Proper cookie management. Now, this is where we start getting technical for the developers indeed. For those of you that actually develop, and for those of you that don't, I'm going to try and break this down. In web technologies, what we use to determine who is cookies most of the time. So a cookie basically is an ID card. So in real life, this would be my cookie. Any user that signs in has a cookie, and if that cookie is mismanaged, it can give the person access to things that he is not supposed to have access to. So as a developer, I'm not going to teach you because it will take us hours, but you need to learn how to properly manage your cookies. Proper authorization implementation. How you determine that I am me, I don't know how to explain that in better, but how do you determine that the person that is entering this website at this point in time is soft and not Ebuka is very important. Because if for some reason Ebuka can log in and try and look like soft and you think he's soft, he gets permissions that soft has to. So you can access soft files, delete it, maybe withdraw that 100 million and it's in Zanzibar next week. Just maybe. IDs. And the reason I put this is for developers. A lot of developers implement things and they use IDs. So you have, for those of you that have been on sites, you go to a site, let's say Facebook, and facebook.com/one is your profile. A lot of developers like associating things to one. So here's a trick for you guys. If you guys want to learn how to hack, here's a trick. And if you use it and they take you, you're on your own. That's what I'm going to say. Anywhere you see numbers on a site, you can actually try and manipulate it to see if it will show you something you're not supposed to see. And it's part of the things we do as hackers to get information that we're not supposed to get. A lot of people and a lot of developers, due to not knowing, assign people to numbers. They call it IDs. So I can be ID 1 and Ebuka can be ID 2. And then the privileges they will tie it to that number. So if the page that I'm seeing is profile/1, and I mistakenly change it to profile/2, I might just start looking at Ebuka's information and how much he has in his bank account. For developers, please don't do this. Because if you tie it to an ID and they change it, it's your choice. Most of the time, the best approach is to tie any sort of authorization to your cookies. Lastly, admin flag in cookies. Cookies are basically a line of text, for those of you that know it. Most of the time, your cookie is a text. It's just a string. Some people, the way they do their cookies is they will write the person's name. So soft-admin. Encode it to base 64 and pass it in there. But people like me that know what to do, that see soft-admin, or sorry, soft-user, we will change it to soft-admin, -admin, and then, well, we're admins now, I guess. Injection. Users wouldn't do that. A lot of developers develop products thinking that users are normal. Let me tell you, users are not. I am not a normal user. If you put something and you give me space to manipulate it, I will manipulate it. And you will suffer. So injection basically runs on the permission that users do things that they're not normally supposed to do. For example, a normal person, when he sees profile/1, has no business changing it to 2. So as a developer, it might not cross your mind that, okay, let's not use 1. Let's use ABCD, random numbers. But then when you leave it as 1, a non-normal user like me will be like, if I change that thing to 2, what will happen? what will actually happen? And this is where the concept of injection comes. It is generally stated that you do not allow users to inject or impute anything where they are not needed. If the user has to inject or has to impute text, make sure it is sanitized. And what does sanitization means? Make sure it is safe for the system. Check if it has brackets, check if it has semicolons, check if it looks like a piece of code that is not supposed to be run, basically. Just ensure that whatever is entering your system is safe. So for example, it is like when you're getting to that door and they check if you have a gun. That is what injection is. Ensure that nobody walks into a gun with your site. If you allow anybody to enter anyhow and put in anything into your system, you can basically just give them a loaded gun and say, shoot me at the end of the day. So I'm just going to run through injections. We have XSS, which is known as cross-site scripting in the security world. It basically means that, and this only works for web guys, basically mostly for web guys, few cases in Android, but rarely. It basically means that the user came in and put in JavaScript code into your site, and instead of your site to sanitize it, it ran it. Code injection basically is like cross-site scripting, but rather than using JavaScript, use Python or any other language that you guys, if you use C++, you're on your own. Structured query language. Now, SQL is not a vulnerability, but we have something called SQL injection. It basically means you allow the user to manipulate your query runs or your database. So you are running a query and then you allow the user's inputs to affect your query. Most of the time, this will be manipulated and the user can get information that you would not like him to access. Vulnerable and outdated components. For WordPress users, it is necessary. It's not going to kill you. WordPress is easy. You update at a click of a button. Update everything updatable. Because drag and drop. Exactly. You update anything possible because most of the time when they release updates is because somebody has hacked it somewhere, but you don't know about it. So always update. Services on ports, and this for web developers. You open a server. You're only using SSH and port 8080 for your website. But for some reason, port 1 to 1000 is open. Why? Are you expecting somebody there? Come inside. You don't do that. Like I said, always update. Better. Most developers have the fear that if they update, something is going to break. But like we say, it's better for it to break in your hands than for it to break in my hands. So now I'm going to break this down to more relatable vulnerabilities. And these are the vulnerabilities that people like me look for when we're looking at sites. So basically, what do I do in my job? They give me a website that one of you has made, and they tell me to hack it before somebody outside hacks it. Session hijacking. So session hijacking, what is it, where is it, and where is it found, and how to stop it? For developers, please bring out your notes and write, because this is the part where you actually need to write. Session hijacking is the first thing we look for. And those of you that knows the concept of session, a session basically is, like I said, my ID card. When a user logs into a website, he is assigned a session. He is given a cookie, and that session basically means for this period of time, this cookie says that your name is Ebuka. And while you have this session or this ID card, you can access so, and so. Session hijacking is when me as a user tries to steal that session from Ebuka. So basically, I can, maybe Ebuka left his laptop open. And for those of you that leave your systems open, you're on your own. You leave your system open, I go there, and sessions are very easy to access. I go there, I carry it, and I put it on our laptop, and it shows me your information. If your cookies are exposed, the person automatically has access to your site. So where can it be found? Like I said, inspect the elements. I'm not going to go into that because, like I said, they didn't get my dongle. How to stop session hijacking? Basic practice for session hijacking is only allow your cookies to last for a certain period of time. So for example, you can say a session should last for 10 minutes, 30 minutes, maybe an hour. This is because if somebody steals a session cookie, after 10 minutes, he has to steal it again. So that's basically the only thing you can do. To be very honest, if your session cookie is stolen, there's nothing they can do. They will access your site. But the practice is limits the amount of access they have to the site, the amount of time they can access it. On authenticated pages, I still don't believe that this is a thing in this day and age, but for some reason it is. So unauthenticated pages basically means if we had this room and there was no door on it, so any random individual could walk into it, that is unauthenticated pages on a website. Where is it found? Bad developers' laptops and systems. How to stop it? Always use session cookies. Always authenticate. Always make sure that somebody, you know who is entering your site and the person needs something to access certain parts of your site. I feel this is my best villain yet. I will introduce you to Queryman. SQL. What is it? I think been through this. It is when your user realizes that his inputs affect the query that you are running. For those of you that don't know, sites are basically built with databases. And for you to fetch information from a site, you need to send a query. And this query, if manipulated by a user, can give you information. Where is it found? Most of the time, it's found in input fields. So some users, like me or like myself, have learned the art of placing random characters, not random actually, but random to random people, to allow the database bring out things that is not supposed to bring out. It can also be used to manipulate login pages, because for those of you that don't use APIs, and that means when you are implementing your login page, it is a query that figures out whether the person is a user or not. IDOR, or as I know him, Shifty. So IDOR means insecure direct object reference. And that's just big English to accessing information that you're not meant to access. So basically, like I said, if you profile /1 shows me my profile, and I can change it to /2 and it shows me Ebuka's profile, I change /3 and it shows me Temi's profile, that is an IDOR. And it is a very vulnerable, it is the easiest vulnerability that most attackers will find. And where is it found? Most of the time it's found in links. And you see where developers use, most of the time you see a number there, /1, /2, /3, /4. Anytime people like me sees numbers, we are happy. You will see me on my table smiling. How do you stop it? For developers that do web development, don't use numbers to tie particular pages. Please don't. And if you are going to use an ID, make sure it's complicated. Encrypt it, add random numbers. Let me give you the technical terms. You have an ID in your database. You have something they call a UUID. It is a more complicated string, but it is tied to that number one that you rather use. So you use the UUID so the person cannot guess that. If you do not understand that, Google is your best friend. Moving on to code injection. Code injection, we've been through this. Next page. I wanted to show the demo, but I can't right now. SSRF, server-side request forgery. It is when you require, it's usually found when a site asks for a link. So most of the time, maybe you want to upload a picture and they say upload a picture through a link. That is when you find SSRF. And basically, it means that you can allow the site to download harmful things or give information that it's not supposed to be. It is a rather complex vulnerability. That's why I don't want to explain it too much. So I'm just going to tell you guys to do your homework. I would have shown you, but next slide. We have a junior brother we call OWASP Mobile Top 10. So this is just like the OWASP Top 10, but for mobile applications. Moving on. Now, I'm going to state this. I am not a mobile developer. So anything I say, or any rubbish that comes out of my mouth, take it like that. And go and use Google to confirm it when you get home. Okay, let's go. Platform misuse. As you all know, there are two top platforms when it comes to mobile, Android and iOS. So platform misuse basically means misusing features. So, and I don't know how to explain this, but for Android developers, they have certain features and libraries they have to use a certain way. When you misuse it, it can cause attackers to break into your system. Lack of data storage security. Lack of data storage security means that you do not put in place proper controls for data storage. Now, it is hardly frowned upon for you to store anything on a phone. And how do I explain that? As a mobile app developer, anything you want to store, it is recommended you store it on the cloud. And the reason being that anybody that has access to the phone has access to that data. So if your phone is stolen, they have access to your data. The recommended practice for lack of data storage security is don't store it on the phone. And if you're going to store it on the phone, encrypt the out of it. Fill in the gap. Unsafe communications. Unsafe communications, because nowadays we have a very popular concept called APIs. APIs basically aid communication, and it's basically how your app talks to your backend or your server. The short and long story of this is always use HTTPS. Don't use HTTP for no reason. Authentication issues. We've talked about this when we're doing web. Find a way and a safe way to know who is accessing your site, and make sure it is the person that claims they are accessing that is accessing. Lack of cryptography. Like I said, if you have to store data on your device, encrypt it. And if you're going to encrypt it well. I cannot go into details, but there are certain algorithms, encrypting algorithms, that are not safe. So you don't use unsafe algorithms. You have to figure out which ones are safe and then use those ones. Insufficient authorization. Now, this is where I have to explain the difference between authentication and authorization. Does anybody know it? Shows that my name is Sheyi, and yes, the Sheyi trying to access it. And yes, my name is Sheyi, my name is Caleb, but Caleb sounds cooler, so I use Caleb when I'm outside. Um, and authorization basically means, am I allowed to make this step? Is Caleb allowed to make this step? Yes, allow Caleb. If he's not, send Caleb back. Poor quality client code. This is basically developers. It means that as a developer, your code is just not clean. There's no way I can explain it more than that. How do you get better at this? Watch videos on security and implementing more secure code. Manipulated code. Now, for those of you that don't know in the way mobile applications work is that there's a VM based off of Linux that runs in the background. They call it Delvix. So if you release an application, there is a very small chance that attackers like myself can impute code that you did not input into your applications, and they will resign it and claim that it is your app. This is what causes most malware in applications. And like I said, I can't teach you how to prevent that one. You have to go and do the homework by yourself. Reverse engineering attacks. Those of you that have seen it, who knows what an APK is? An application. That very small, anytime you download something from the Play Store, there's a file called APK. An APK is essentially a zip file, which means it's a bunch of small files together, and inside those small files is the code that it is running. So this is the sad part about most applications. Every application can be reverse engineered, which means you can get back the code that runs the application. So for those of you that want to make money, yes, you can go to Google and try and reverse engineer it and sell it again. You will fail, but you can try it. There is a concept called obfuscation, which is used to hide or basically disturb the way code looks, so that when that code is gotten back, the attacker cannot run it and it's run the way it's supposed to run. It basically means changing classes. If the name of your class is food, changing it to A, B, C, D, A. There are tools like ProGuard or DeskGuard that are used to do that. You can research on that in your free time. And then redundant functionality. There's just a rule when it comes to coding. Don't make it more complex than it has to be. Code in the simplest possible way, so that, because the more complex it is, the more chances that you're going to implement something wrong. Moving on. Tips and tricks when it comes to mobile security. Always encrypt. Always adhere to the platform development best practices and guidelines. I can't repeat this enough. Keep data encrypted. Use SSL or TSL certificates. That basically means use HTTPS. Avoid storing data on mobile devices as much as possible. Verify identity. This basically means the most recommended way for you to perform authentication and to ensure the person that says he is who he is. To ensure that me that is Sheyi, that I'm saying I'm Sheyi, I am Sheyi, is to be done at the back end. And that means do it at the server side rather than doing it on your application. Perform static code analysis. How to explain this? There are tools that have been built by people like me that you give it an APK and it gives you a report on how safe your APK is on a scale of 1 to 100. One of them is, and you can write this down and check later, MobSF. It performs static code analysis, runs to your code and sees if any implementations are off. It is something you can perform by yourself after you've built an application. Securely integrate external libraries. For those of you that do mobile, I don't understand what this means. It basically means when you're using external libraries, use them the way they are supposed to be used and use them in the most secure way. Attempt commands directly. A lot of commands are used when developing mobile. SU, if you need SU means super user. If you need the device to do something that is a normal user cannot do. When you are doing this, make sure that the user has no say in what the command is, because if they do, there's a chance that they will run a command that you're not supposed to run. But ensure robust obfuscation, which means basically make your code look as ugly as possible and as untraceable as possible before it goes live so that nobody can get it back. Check that the log statement and API endpoints are not publicly exposed. Two things in that: log statement and API endpoints. Android has what we call log cards. It basically logs activities that are performed on that application. For developers, it's something that you can leverage to figure out what goes on your application at every point in time. So you have to make sure that these particular log statements are not gotten by attackers and they cannot be influenced. Because if I actually do get to hack the phone, I'm going to wipe it if I can access it. And API endpoints are basically calls that are made to your backend. So usually you do not want your attacker to know where your endpoints are and what they are. If not, they'll call it themselves. Now, the final section before we get to the games. Coding habits. So there are good coding habits that will make sure that people like me don't get food to eat the next day. First of all, sensitive scripts should remain on the server. And I kid you not, I've tested applications where if you go to /1, it has the SQL passwords, SQL database name, just there for me to see. This is temptation now at that point. So any sensitive scripts or anything that has hard-coded passwords should be left either at the back end or should not be visible to the user in any way possible. Never hard code passwords. A lot of people try to write scripts to make life easier, and then they put a password in a text file somewhere thinking, the attacker cannot find it. Well, I will find it. Principle of least privilege basically means, as a coder, a person should only be given the privilege he needs to perform his actions and his actions alone. Least privilege means if all he needs to do is carry the laptop, only give him privileges to carry the laptop and not to look at what is inside the laptop. Learn to code securely. I don't think I need to tell you guys that. You're attending my talk. Authorize and authenticate. I think we've been over this. Make sure whoever is coming, you know who the person is, and make sure the person has access to the action he's trying to perform. Always encrypt. I can't say this. Always encrypt, because if data is leaked, you at least don't want the person to be able to make sense of it. User input is very dangerous and is not supposed to be trusted. Make sure that any user input coming into and coming out of your system is sanitized. Error handling and logging. Like I said, any errors that happen on your site, just try to log it. So in case anything goes wrong, you can reference it. Heed compiler warnings. Those of you that used to run your code and you see yellow lines, I know it's annoying. That's why I run away from coding. But if you see yellow lines, they are there for a reason. It's because the compiler you're using is trained to recognize security vulnerabilities. And then to pop it up in yellow lines that this thing you're using, you're not supposed to use it, but we just want it to run, so we're going to ignore it. Don't ignore it. Heed compiler warnings. Keep it simple. Like I said, the most simple implementation is always the best, because then you can make sure that if something goes wrong, you know where it went wrong. If it's too complex, something will go wrong. That's just the fact. Get yourself a friend that is a hacker. Like I said, it doesn't hurt to get yourself a friend that has cybersecurity skills, because if you actually do bring out an app or bring out an application, you don't have to pay for somebody to help you check if it is secure. And then finally, hire security guys. We need to eat too. And also, it's better that we hack you than somebody outside to hack you. It isn't enough to just code. If you are going to code, you should code securely. If it is not quality, is it quality if it is not secure? And that's the question I'm posing. We're all developers, and in our daily lives, we're going to release code that performs one feature or another. And no matter how small it is, if it is not secure, somebody is going to manipulate it. Finally, learn more. These are sites where you can actually learn more about mitigation, security, so you guys can just snap it and check it out. I still did not get my dongle, so you guys don't get to see me hack today. Things to remember: never trust user input, always encrypt, like I've said so many times. And finally, thank you.